These 5 rules help me become a better Minecraft builder. I just wish that I knew them sooner. Number 1 is never build flat. When I started out building in Minecraft, this is kind of what it looked like. It was just a simple cube, one door, and just oak planks everywhere. Sure, it got the job done. I definitely survived, but it just kind of looked boring. To start off with this, make sure you're building in an odd number. And it's also kind of part of my brand because, it's in my name. But doing so just adds a little bit of cohesion and gives you a fine point in the middle that we'll talk about soon. But looking at this wall is relatively flat and boring. So if we push this wall in by 1 block, it's gonna look a lot better. Already, I think this looks so much better. And don't worry, we will expand upon this soon, but moving it back by 1 block just adds a lot of depth and a lot of character that we didn't have before on the flat wall. Along with that, make sure you have an overhanging roof. If our roof was lined up exactly with these oak logs, it's gonna look a little funny. Let me show you. Without the overhanging roof, it's only really hanging over this section here, and it just kind of looks not right. But if we bring the roof out and it overhangs by an extra block, it again, like the flat wall that we moved back, adds so much character and depth to this that we can expand upon. And like I said before, if you build with an odd number, it makes everything a little cohesive. For example, if you build with 5 blocks or 7 blocks in the center, we can end up having a point in our roof at the top, which makes these builds look so much better. If you're someone who likes to build with an even number of blocks, let me know in the comments down below, because I have to know why. Also, with your flat walls, make sure you indent your door. This alone gives so much character to just these simple blocks that we're building with. And all I did was I set the door on the back of this block and put a stair above it to give it some depth and texture. So using just oak planks and oak logs, let's take all of these things for not building flat and put them all together. And just like that, this is a drastic improvement on our very simple house that we had at the beginning. Rule number 2 is build with a block palette. I've said this before in videos, but using a very simple block palette can bring a boring build and make it fantastic. For example, if we use our main oak log like we did before, and we have a secondary block, which is our stone bricks, we'll have cobblestone as an accent block, and just to add a little bit of texture, we'll add in some moss. Now, this is just a very simple idea. You can definitely expand upon this, but go with me on this one. Let's take this very simple oak log frame and just use some of the tips that I've talked about so far. First off, I'm going to take these stone bricks and we're just going to inlay them by 1 block all the way around. Now that we have our secondary block of our stone bricks in, let's add some texture and accents with our cobblestone. Doing just that little bit of work adds a lot to just a very simple house. Now let's add even more with our moss block for some extra texture. Now you could definitely add more things like the mossy stone bricks or the mossy cobblestone, but I hope so far this is giving you guys an idea of a simple block palette that you can just kind of throw together with stuff that you can easily find. Rule number 3 is to break symmetry. If you look at houses in your neighborhood, are they always perfectly symmetrical? Some might be, but it's the houses that break that symmetry that really stand out and make us remember them. And you can do this in many different ways, such as adding an extension to your house or adding a chimney or anything like that. So let me throw a roof on this really quick with an overhang and show you some ways that you can break symmetry with your builds. Now with the roof in, it still has some stuff that we can add, even though it's relatively symmetrical. The first thing is add a chimney. Doing something as simple as adding a chimney breaks your line of sight and drags your eye to that feature. So when I'm looking at this house, yes, I see that it's relatively symmetrical, but sticking out at this spot is this chimney. My eye is drawn to it because it sticks out and it's different from what I'm looking at. Another way that you can add more to this is by adding a shed or an awning. And I like to do that with extinguished campfires. It's very subtle, but doing something simple like this just adds a little bit more to the build to break up the monotony. And you can do a lot underneath an awning like this. You could have a flower bed, you could have your storage, you could have a furnace or a crafting table, kind of anything you want to put down there. Before I jump into our last 2 rules, let me add a little bit more to this and I'll explain what I did right now. So I didn't do much, but I went ahead and I added this transition piece between our our oak logs and the front face of the roof, which I did just use stripped oak logs back there, but you could really do anything that kind of draws your eye away from the stone and gives it some character. In addition, I did add a little bit of a window with an oak trap door, but you could easily put a fence or a piece of glass pane there to make it different, but this is just one example. I like to do this with a lot of my builds because if you see the transition between the oak logs and the stripped oak, it's not great. So let me go ahead and just break this, and you can see that we have this kind of harsh line that runs all the way across, and it doesn't look that great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. But if we do something simple by just adding in a line of slabs and trapdoors, it breaks that up a little bit, gives the top portion some more depth, and just makes it a little bit more interesting. But so far, we've kept everything in order, from making sure our walls aren't flat, we had a little bit of depth and texture, our roof is overhanging, and we're breaking symmetry. The next thing we need to do is give this build a story. The inside of this build is completely empty, and even though it's not the biggest build in the world, I gotta do that side. Ignore that, there's still a lot we can do. So here I moved the house over to my build tutorial world. But can you tell something's different? If we go inside, we see that the house now has an interior and an owner. Everybody meet Carl. So Carl has been living in this house for about 3 years. He paid about 29 emeralds when he traded for some bread, and he's been doing his best to keep up with his leatherworking job as well as increasing his book collection. So when I say give your builds a story, you can do it this way by adding lore or whatever you want to call it to your build. If you make your builds feel alive, you give them a story, you give them a purpose, it helps everything kind of just explode. At least that's how I feel. If you've made it this far in the video, let me know in the comments down below. Do you add lore or stories to your build? And if so, tell me about some. Now, rule number 5 is really simple. It's finish the area. Now, already this build is looking pretty good to compare to how it used to be. We added in some windows, we got an interior, we got a chimney, but there's a lot more we could do to the outside. Just like that, this build is finished. And honestly, I didn't do a whole lot. The main thing I did was I added this path that kind of went off to our awning that we built and to the front door of the house, because as I'm traveling through, I imagine this is going to be where most of the wear and tear is going to be. I also went ahead and added in various decorations such as cobblestone walls and some fencing, along with some foliage such as these birch leaves for bushes, some hay bales, and some pumpkins. You don't have to go crazy, but just doing little things like this adds so much life and can also add on to your story. For example, out here in front of the house, I have this little area where Carl likes to come out and chop wood for his fireplace. He's also got some storage out front to keep anything that he gets from foraging, and all of the wood that he chops gets stored over here underneath the awning. Now, I want to clarify that these rules are definitely not perfect, but they are definitely things that helped me as I got better at building over the last few years. So, if you plan on giving them a try, please let me know in the comments down below, and if you found that they were helpful, consider giving this video a like. Also, this house behind me is going to be up on my Patreon and in my Discord for free. If you want access to any of the builds that I have done, whether they're these ones or the ones in my Forever World, consider joining on Patreon and dropping any support there if you're able to. But with that, that is enough time for me today, guys, and I will see you in the next one. See ya!